Thank you, Kathmandu Triennale, for having me, and congratulations to the entire team. So I have today is bits of audio and visuals presentation for. So maybe we can start.
Towel with text written on it, and some hair strands laying on the floor casually. Additionally, a washing machine pasted with a photo of the woman in her own bathtub. Now, you head up through the old wooden stairs. Exposed are the thickly drawn charcoal figure and some gestures on the walls. Surrounded are yet more photos hanging by the white threads. Some others sprouting out from a briefcase. Some stuck on the ladders, and so on. The right room on the first floor leads you to an installation. Photos pasted on the boxes, illuminated by a single light, pointing with focus on the floor. There is a video playing in between. Women collectively expressing themselves with their movements in solidarity. The next room, a smaller space, few looked-up papers lying around. Text written boldly with charcoal on them. By the door, 2 closets stuffed with textiles. A headset is resting on the textile, welcoming you to listen to her story. Now, coming back to the text on the floor again, there rests a screen on a wooden chest, playing a gaze of the female wearing her father's shirt. The shirt now itself hangs just above that play of gaze. Throughout the whole space, sound is traveling back and forth, allowing you into an inner journey. As we proceed further, we land on the second floor. Dimmed lights with few of the videos playing simultaneously, almost in a circular form, almost making a visual of somewhat like an island. As you walk through that, you can enter the puja room of the house. Threads are entangled carefreely, with old cheesecloth wrapping the objects to create a sudden ambiance. In between is a video displaying the woman, jumping, panting, dancing, and more of such. Handkerchiefs with photos, some in the small drawers, text on the walls and the windows. As you exit from there, you see textile layered with limestone hanging by a corner, welcoming you to a tiny room by the stairs. Inside, a textile is making a hollow-like shape. The woman, unbothered, sitting within that space. Unbothered and intolerant this time. Perhaps of exhaustion, perhaps of frustrations, and perhaps of more. So we'll have more visuals now. Yet we are still trapped within these mundane concepts. योभन्दा अर्को नाउ भन्ने चाहिँ Body has been an obstacle in many ways for me ever since I was little. It is not that I am completely in a negative phase with it, but many of my hurdles started with the body. Today, I do see those obstacles more as of a self-implicated nature. It has always been an exterior view, opinion of my body that I focused on. I felt caged somehow. In 2018, I collaborated with two other artists, Sonam and Irina. We together worked on the theme of gender and identity, a project commissioned by Photo Kathmandu. We focused on my relation to the body and the implications of it. I identified my body as a failure to some extent, as not being able to reproduce. I took that phase of my life harshly and unfairly to myself. My outlook of this female body was limited. I think that has a lot to do with being an Asian body. Somewhat. South Asian to be specific. Is a female body a performative space? As I worked intimately around my body, I began to understand different dimensions concerning it. Body is as we perceive her to be. Body is sincere. Body is giving. And this body has a purpose. The physical kink within this body then perhaps gradually is starting to manifest a realm of vastness. It is so seamed of many possibilities and experiences. Now we play the last one, the other. Thank you. Yet we are still trapped within these mundane concepts. Confinement of a certain kind, an obedient ordeal, beauty. It is all too redundant. It is holding us back to further imagine, express and share inclusive understandings apart from what we know of already. We are seeking progressive and liberating perspectives. We are seeking to apply the knowledge to the method of seeing and understanding. How to appreciate and accept the different authentically. The possibilities of those understandings helping us in realizing alternative means of functioning. Furthermore, can we enhance and participate in redefining the way we understand the feminine aesthetic? What role does emotion play in the projection of the feminine aesthetic? How can an act or a state of being be a form of beauty? What about the irregularities, the discarded, the overlooked? What if the shift in our way of seeing and understanding feminine aesthetic would help us create a gentler and an empathetic nature of living? Could it then perhaps play a part in discouraging the prevalent practice of objectification of a female body? How we view a female body matters. It matters because it links towards the way we treat each other, understand each other, affecting the most certainly how we treat the environment surrounding us. Again, I'm coming back to the body. At times, I think, what if a body was to live without knowing of existing norms, concepts, and discriminations? How would that body live up to be? What if an acceptable body is every body? How can we reimagine? How can we realize the other? Other that is us, the other that includes all of us. Perhaps the hollow inside is seeking the other. Perhaps the kink is the route. So, one last picture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keepa. Thank you, Irina and Sonam, for creating a space where we can talk about our own bodies, our female bodies, our fluid bodies, where it's a space which does not exist in gender. I'm sorry, I'm got a bit more into the work. You can see the collective work at Nepal Art Council. I would like to now invite our next speaker, Hitesh Vaidya. Hitesh.
Hello everyone. Can we start the slides? So before I start speaking about my work, I want to talk a bit about the earthquake of 2015. As for many people, the earthquake was kind of a traumatic experience. because for losing the loved ones, for losing the shelter, the space, home, and that time I felt was very traumatic for me because I lost my grandfather during the earthquake, and I lost the space that I call home was reduced down to the rubbles, and being able to grieve on the loss of my loved ones, and seeing even walking around in the city, I saw so much of chaos, and it somehow got stuck in me for many years. And my work is more of an attempt to kind of heal from that experience, and my attempt to recollect the memories that I have in my home, the memories that and the moments and the memories that I have with my families. And home for me is not just an physical space, but it's a structure that holds down the happenings of my family, not only from my time, but from the times of my forefathers, because that house nearly stood for like more than a centuries, and my forefathers have lived there, go on with their lives, and somehow I feel that somehow those experiences are captured in the walls, in the physical structure of the house itself. And after the earthquake, then I realized that when the structure that holds so much uh, of the people that I love, then I started like going back to the site, and then trying to recollect the memories, the moments that I shared in that space. So also I believe that the way the house or the space are managed kind of work as a like visual commentators on the social or cultural history of a community. And while I was trying to heal from the trauma of the earthquake, I constantly was going into the site and staying there and rethink how the space used to be, and rethink how I used to live there, how I like the moments that I shared within that home space. And even at some point I went there and I reenact the moment inside the house in whatever the spaces remained after the earthquake. Next slide. So, to recollect the memories of my home, I constantly visited the site where there is like remnants of the house, and like I consciously begin to start selecting certain objects from the debris that I recognized and that I could connect with, and started thinking about where it belonged and what part of the home and what kind of memories it connects with me. I started writing down those memories and kind of create an archive of the objects I collected. And not just my home, I started going around the city and also the sites where the houses are being renovated and there are objects that are lying around. I look at them, and if I feel connected, it feels like it's also part of my home, and it somehow connects with my attempt of trying to rebuild the memories of my home. I also started collecting them, bringing the studios and in my studio, and in the process of creating this work, I also visited many places inside the Kathmandu Valley or outside, just to look at how the house space are managed, and to look at the old dwellings, and to to make it as a reference to kind of build the memories that I have with my home, and even ask people to let them in their house to look at them and to talk about the space and how old it has been, how they have shared their experience, how they have experienced their space. And after bringing in those objects in the studio and doing the memory writings and thinking about what I could connect with them, I started painting my memories on the object itself. For specifically like this work, like it's more of a reflection of the ritual or the happenings in my house, like specific to this work, like during the time of Dasai, the Chitrakar families in our community used to bring in the hand-printed poster of the goddess Bhagavati into our homes. We used to worship it, and we used to, after the ritual have ended, we used to like paste it on the walls. And those kind of mundane and micromanagement of house somehow really reflected on how I like in the community or in my family, how we used to live. And also during the process of recollecting memories of my home, I have a lot of conversation with my family members and even with neighbors, like trying to build house space where, and also to think about how our life used to be, and also think about the life of my forefathers and how the decision made by them, or how like I was kind of trying to rethink the space through the memories of my family members also. So it was kind of, because for years I could not heal from that experience, this work kind of helped me to like really at least preserve some part of the part of my home in a form that could be hold for a longer time, or like the memories that are very personal to me. And also it somehow somehow touches upon the communal memory of the community that I live in. So that was more about the work that I did that is exhibited in the Triennale, and the later slides are more about how my practice is going on right now. I'm very much influenced by my hometown city, Bhaktapur, like because within few decades also I have seen a lot of changes that have been going on in the city itself. Like even few years back, there used to be quite wide open spaces, and there was places to move around, and there are a lot of green spaces, and also even from the land to the river, everything was more fresh. Even the smell, from the smell of the air to the part I take to walk from and to move around the city. And but later with the त्यो unmanaged वेमा त्यो एकदम urbanization हुन थालिसकेपछि चाहिँ it feels like the city itself is not recognizable anymore with high-rise buildings and even no place to even sit down, take time, and also the lifestyle of the city itself have evolved so much from the past few years. Like as I remember, like many people relied on the farming as a measure, like economical profession, and also as being from Newar community, like it's the farming is so much closer to our living culture, and it's somehow shifted with how the landscape have changed. So for now, I'm working more on the changing landscapes of the city itself, and it's more the works that are later showed are more of a reflection to that. And while I'm working with urban changes, and in terms of choice of medium, I consciously choose the medium that somehow resonate with my idea. For example, like if I am talking more about the urban changes or like the concrete landscapes that are evolving around the city, I tend to work more with the concrete itself. How do I use the medium that is so much close to my ideas and use that to express the things I want to say, and not just land, also even the rivers and how it have changed within few years. And specifically this work was like an kind of future prediction for me. Like before, as I remember, the rivers even around the city used to be so clean with very transparent, visible water flowing around throughout the years. But later it got so polluted, like it feels like it's no more of a river but more of a running sewage with a lot of plastic wastage. So it makes me think that like in future maybe the fossils that are formed in the river would be out of the plastic wastage. So it's more of a reflection on how I am experiencing those changes, and I'm not trying to be too critical about what it should be or should not be and what kind of decision needs to be made, but it's bit more personal. It's somehow it's not fitting into my memory of the space or the place I used to live. So, thank you. That is all.
Thank you, Hitesh. And if you would like to interact with him or have any comments or question, please feel free to ask the question as well.
Hello? Check. Check 1, 2. Oh, check.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the projection of those details caused by earthquake that had left so traumatic experiences to many of us, but he has recreated them in so beautiful, poignant, pathetic, but beautiful as well. As to this, I just want to relate one event of Peru, where after the war and after the devastation and destruction, many people were slain, maimed, and died, and their relatives would keep on going to the debris every day in the morning so as to collect some relics, so as to get some non-items, objects of them. And they would just cherish those things. Suppose a small piece of leather belt got, small strap of something got, or something shoes, etc. And after that, we're getting those very objects, and they would just cherish them, and they would leave some soothingly some more days. And in the same way, they would go foraging things, and in that very process, a lot of things have been excavated, dug out. In the same way, you have also very well and very amazingly managed to capture those events. We have unnoticed those things, most of us, and this because of that very portrayal and very beautiful component of the artworks is coming up. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you. It makes me feel happy that you could relate in that sense, because like I also believe that object by itself is we kind of ignore it of being an ordinary object that are lying around. But I think if we are paying a close attention to the things we possess that belongs to us, it becomes a basis of connecting with the people that we love, that people, even to the people that used to exist before us or the part of the family. Like how do we connect with people that are no more with our life, within our life, but are so much influential to us? Like it's because we as human beings don't exist for a long period of time. We have limitations to our life, but the things we use, things we possess, things we pass down from generation to generation works as a part of our cultural and family or like cultural social histories, and they always would become a basis to understand the people and their livelihood and also to remember them out of love.
One more addition in this regard, you have expanded the horizon of your works from the small town of yours and from that entire Bhaktapur, then going to the Kathmandu Valley, and finally culminating the same into the very universe, concerned with the rivers, concerned with the other natural calamities and shrinkage of those very public space and urbanization, mismanagement, debris, sewage. So that is very good humanistic concern, and artworks should serve this way. And arts, of course, have many objectives, and the very generating awareness and creating the thing to the smaller microcosm, to the wider realm is a beautiful part. I have to appreciate you and salute you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you have more questions, Hitesh will be available and you can meet him in person and talk. You can see Hitesh's work at Siddhartha Art Gallery, exhibiting now. Thank you very much. Thank you. And continuing with the idea of collective loss and how do we deal with it, the oral histories, the stories we had, and how our generation are navigating with the changes as well as the stories we had. I'd like to welcome Lav Collective here. Lav Collective is comprised of 5 artists: Dikshyant, Prakruthi, Akshara, and Akshara, I'd like to repeat myself. Lav Collective is comprised of 5 artists: Dikshyant, Prakruthi, Arunatpal, Akshara, and Sara. A multidisciplinary collective of artists, designers, and filmmakers that functions across cities and borders. The Lav is a young collective based in Darjeeling, working together with the local youth, archiving oral history through filmmaking. And then Lav they will also be talking about the project which is exhibiting at Kathmandu Triennale at Bahadur Shah Baitak. It's called Dante Katha. and we'll be also sharing a little bit about how they came together in different time and how they became a collective. Thank you very much.
Hi, we are one small portion of the lab collective, which is like a lot of people. Next slide. Lots of people. And then next slide. Yeah, so we're like the people who are just representing the entire. So we started it out as like a collaborative project where like lots of people from different backgrounds with different interests and like different skill sets come together to like, you know, tell stories that like fascinate all of us. That was the idea behind the lab. And also like all the people who were making, like who were working as the lab, they were all like, say I'm a textile designer, Prakruthi is also a textile designer, he's a product designer but he's a filmmaker also. So like everyone's doing various things, and through the lab we were all able to explore different mediums to come up with this.
So, working as a collective, our experience working as a collective so far, as a young collective of artists, the experience has been more like different organs, like we are different organs of a bigger organism that the collective becomes. And not only the work, but the process itself takes form of that organism.
Yeah, and like everyone plugs in a very unique way. Yeah, so that's what. So when we made this project, we were based out of Darjeeling, but then when COVID and all of that happened, we found that there was like people from all around the world. We were all working together via internet and stuff like that to like make this like project happen. And this was like this was a part of our process, the storyboarding part of the film.
And about the lab, the lab during this project, which we are exhibiting at KT, this specific project we were based out of Darjeeling, but almost 80% of our collaborators or co-creators, most of them are from different parts of India and abroad. So that brought in a lot of cultural diversity as well into the group.
And out of all of us, Dikshyant was the only one who was like based, from there. And all of us like came in at different intervals of the project. So say suppose the animators came in the last 2 months. I came in like a year ago, and like all of us did tiny parts of the project, which culminated into. Yeah, so this is all of us working together. That's us shooting footage over a Google Meet call, and this is us working in Darjeeling. And next. Yeah, so what brought us all together in the beginning was we wanted to create something that would like bring the community together, like involving shared memories and like shared stories that like everyone knows of or doesn't know of yet but would enjoy or should know. And that was the intention behind this project.
So Darjeeling, West Bengal, India, Darjeeling having a very deep history of colonization and stuff like that. So when we reached the space, me being a localite, but with people with different perspectives, I was able to look at my own space, my own culture from a different lens, which I had not been able to do before. And one of the things we realized was the idea of decolonizing stories in the space that we lived in. And I don't know if some of you are aware of the issue of this separate statehood in Darjeeling, West Bengal itself. So the main idea that the people of Darjeeling have hold on to is the idea of identity crisis. because we are a majorly Nepali speaking community in India, and so we kind of feel left out in most of the mainland activities or development. So when we kind of started discussing what is identity crisis, where does it come from, is it actually about language, culture, then in those conversations we figured out it's also about the stories that represent our identities. So in this case it was mostly the indigenous stories, which are like the oral folk stories, which had no form of documentation or archiving locally or even in the mainstream medium.
Yeah, so this was basically while all of us were working together, one common thread that linked all of us was something that makes sense to us, and along with that it makes sense to a larger group of people, in the sense that me coming from Mumbai, I may not know a lot about the folk stories from Darjeeling or from the Northeast as a whole, but I do have some stories that I associate to when I think about my own landscape. And there are always like connects between these stories, even though they're like widely separate, like the context is fully different, but there are elements and identities and characters that you connect to. So yeah.
Also the way the stories are shared, like for example in our film, the grandmother of the girl who's the main character in the story, she's the one who's telling her the story. So even if we hadn't heard the story before, this like feeling of like someone older in the family telling us some stories that only exist in their mind but now also exist in our mind. It's like a shared experience no matter where you're from.
So our process started with like listening to stories from people from the space who have lived those stories themselves, because we realized we were looking at it from a very outsider point of view in the beginning. So we wanted to hear them out and also discuss with them. So, but after doing the local research and collection or interaction, we realized these stories are not just very local to Darjeeling, it was pan-Himalayan. Then when we started researching more, it was not just pan-Himalayan, it was across borders, like it was in other countries as well. Like there are some core elements, or the origin of the stories was similar, but since they are oral narratives, the way it travels across, or the way the stories take form, it's very organic, because it's not in a written format or a visual format, anything. You orally hear it, you imagine it in your way, and you retell it with your details added in it. So we realized everyone was giving new stories, new details about the same stories. So from a large collection of stories, the folk stories or oral story, the oral narratives, we fixed on 3 main narratives. Briefly to talk about them, the first one was about Hartal. So this narrative is about a practice which one community believes, the other community practices, which is basically taking the root of this plant called Aconitum bisma, locally known as Bikuma or Hartal also. So the root is used to poison someone from the other community, and if you do that, like as a sacrifice, then you get prosperous. So this is briefly the story. And when we started, so this was on the surface when we heard it. We were already fascinated, but then we started talking to people who have researched about this. Then it was something very unexpected, where it was about the othering of another community. So from Sikkim, India, so in Sikkim, in northern Sikkim, they believe that Tibetan community practices this ritual as Hartal. So, and again, we spoke to some people from the Tibetan community, and they believe the Nepali community do it. So it was always about the othering or creating that difference. And the second narrative is about Rage Bhoot. So Rage Bhoot is like fire sparks that you see on the other side of the hill, and there are many explanations behind it. And the last one is the very popular story, which is about Banjakri and Lam Lame. And its origin comes from Bon shamanism and lots of origin sources that we have mapped. But these stories, we were really fascinated and we wanted to work with it.
So when we were like collecting the stories, like he said, since everyone had like a slightly different version of it, and only because it was like, it existed in like the oral form, there was no like defined visuals as to what these characters or these phenomena looked like. So that was one of the things we explored, because like when someone tells you the story, it's like alive inside your head in images, in like sounds, colors, textures. So through the film, we wanted to explore what that would look like seen through the eyes of a child. And yeah, no, can you go back?
Us not being from that, apart from me, the rest of the collective, not being from that particular part of the community, so we didn't want to take full, ownership of the stories. Like, give me a story, I will retell it. It wasn't like that. So first we wanted to understand, and every time we were talking to people about these stories, the details, the images, everything kept changing in our head. So with the local artists in Darjeeling, we decided, okay, maybe we have to archive it or document it in some form or the other. Then we were thinking of different forms of documentation. Then we realized, obviously, film is very fluid and it's easy to communicate. So we went with film as the medium to document it.
Film is
one of the mediums.
One of the mediums. So, and yeah, like in that previous slide, so if this film exists now, and say someone never had the chance to hear it from someone they know in their life, like the memory of these stories will be kept alive for a little bit longer, and maybe someone else will find them like fascinating. And yeah, and also it's about like representation. When someone finds something like super interesting or like captivating, and then they think it's captivating enough that they want to turn it into like some kind of tangible art, and then you see it and it's something that's happened in your life or something that it kind of like validates the subject or the characters. And
I think that was one of the main concerns for us, as to these stories or characters have never been represented. They have been represented through drawings, but in this medium or tangible medium, it was never documented. So it was a responsibility for us to represent them in the right way, because we were giving it form and shape. So that was a lot of responsibility for us.
Yeah, so this was when we were like ideating for like the characters in the film, considering all the information we've gotten from all the different sources, what would be like the best way to like represent it in the film? Like for example, the sketch that's drawn in the center here, we were going with this is for the character Range Booth in the film, and the keywords that we were given like from different people were like, oh, it's like a fire, it's like really fluid in its form, it doesn't have a particular shape, there's variety of colors, there's like a gradation of colors. So we wanted to represent all of those things, but in a very tangible format. So there were many iterations done to represent the same thing. For example, the Nietzsche one is like a different way of representing the same keywords. And that was something that we as textile designers were really excited by particularly. Yeah. And also like all the elements in the story, like in terms of even the flower that was, even the plant that was there, aconite, even Rangebhoot, and like even the clothes, they were all like made in such a way that they were combined like in representation to the context of the space and the people. Like using local textiles and local like aesthetics and next. Yeah, this way.
So, in the current date and time, the form of storytelling is majorly, or it's dominated by film as a medium, the form of storytelling. So, we wanted to decolonize stories, as in where I come from and the youth or my age group or younger than me, we know about Marvel characters, we know about other superheroes, we know about Cartoon Network characters. But I realized after talking to people and re-hearing these stories that there are crazier characters that we have from our stories, which we have heard, but we have never looked at it in a fascinating way. Like, Banjakri, like, Rangebhoot, he's the fire god, he lives in the forest. It's like a spirit. Like, we have watched Miyazaki movies, Studio Ghibli movies, and we are like mind blown, but we never kind of related back to our own stories. So this was a way of re-looking at it, and the medium that we went with film is because we wanted to get into the popular culture so that we retell it and just doesn't become an archival project, but we kind of retell the stories and it keeps moving forward. Yeah, so the authority of retelling these stories, I already spoke about it, that it was a lot of responsibility for us to give shape and form. So the background image is our animation team trying to iterate or ideate as to how would Banjakri look like. So Banjakri, to give a brief introduction, he is like he is a mystical or mythical character that lives in the forest. He is known to abduct children, take them to the forest, teach them natural healing powers, medicinal plant knowledge, and then the kid is returned back to his wherever he was abducted from in the same shape he was taken in, and now he's a shaman. So these are real, accounts of people who are now practicing shamanism. So when they're describing details of Banjakri, one shaman who's practicing shaman now, he has a different description. Someone who's abducted, again, claims to be abducted, she has a different explanation. So for us, it was very difficult to actually give it one shape and form.
And like, some of the descriptions describe Banjakri to be this small man who's covered in hair. Some people said he was like a big yeti-looking creature. So it was like all over the place in terms of like what this character looked like.
Also, another thing about yetis and Banjakri was, while we were researching, we found lots of materials, but most of the materials were written by Western or European writers. There were no local resources that we could actually pinpoint out there. So everyone kept referring to Banjakri as a yeti, and the locals weren't. Yeah, we can go next.
We've already spoken. Yeah, and another part of these stories were like considering the locales that they're set in, like how these creatures exist in a forest, this one exists on a mountain, and these types of stories like when there's like magical things happening in a forest, like it's written over here, it makes it feel like the forest itself is a magical place, which kind of creates a sense of like reverence in whoever's hearing the story, you know, towards all the places that are also mentioned in the story.
And being, climate conscious and all that, we were drawing lines parallel to these stories where how maybe this was to make the forest a sacred space where we don't interfere, which we are doing it in a very toxic way right now. So we were continuously drawing lines between the stories and our perspectives.
And even though, like we've written over here, they're like myths and folk tales, the fascinating thing is there are lots of elements that are very, very real about them, like the hartal plant. Maybe that process, the act of hartal, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't happen, but the fact that the plant exists makes the story feel that much more tangible. Or the fact that a lot of people explained that Rangibut was like a forest fire, and it was like a small methane explosion in the forest, but some other people saw it as like a dancing fire god. And so like it's fascinating that there are still very real things that tie these stories to reality. So we can't dismiss them as just being like, someone made it up. It's like, we've spoken about this.
Next, please.
So as a part of our process, when we started exploring different mediums of retelling these stories. And for us, textile, animation, as well as live action were some of the mediums that we have currently explored. In animation in itself, like there are 5-6 different styles, and there are different people who have worked on these styles, and somehow they, as like, when the editing was happening and when everything was put together, everything sort of flows into each other, and in the way that there are different iterations of each of these stories, like with every time that they are retold, the animation also, like with the changing styles, it kind of continues, it reflects the same ideology.
So the fact that we were a collective with so many people from so many diverse cultures, with so many different skill sets, it became an advantage for us, because since we were working with stories, oral stories, which keeps changing form and interpretation, so our methods or our aesthetics, since we also had unique aesthetics between us, so it became like when all of us heard one story, we were all interpreting it in a different way, and we were also translating them visually through our own mediums. So having so many people in the collective, it worked out that way for us.
So that was, the previous slide was one style of the animation. This was another one. Next. And then these were some of the textile explorations for the hartal flower. Next. And this another one. Then. So
we basically, when we started working on the story, and there was an animation that was ready like a year before we actually came about making the plant. There were various aspects of the story that we were trying to pull together, as to like, we heard that the roots are very, they're bulbous, but at the same time they're very like
thin, stringy also.
And all the pictures that you see like online also, like we try to look up different species of aconite, different genuses of aconite. Basically we try to look at different references to try and understand what it looks like or what the effect is, and we try to translate that effect through textile mediums, and we explored various like tying techniques, a lot of, and also all the material that was used into making this plant, everything was completely made out of waste, and it was like a combination of like handwork as well as machine work done to like if you go see the plant there, you'll see like the tiny details that are put into every petal, every leaf, and it kind of translates the texture of the story. Like it said that when you see the plant, the flowers are the part that kind of attract you to it, and has like this
with the promise of like riches and like prosperity.
Yeah, and it's the root which is basically the most poisonous part of the plant. And it said that it's a very it said that the root basically it's like wrinkly. No. It's like wrinkly. So there were so many iterations into coming up with the final output also, which is what we wanted to display through the...
Next, please.
And this was some more textile art that was made film.
Yeah, so one of our collaborators, co-creators, Sarah, who was involved with us since the beginning of this project. She's also a textile artist in the Atlas, Amsterdam. So she created this work from Amsterdam itself and then shot it there. And then this is felt work and
it was a stop motion animation.
Yeah. So out here she's trying to represent, could we go back please once? Yeah, so she created this work to kind of show, every time the poisoning story was being described to us, the process of poisoning was also the deadly process, or what happens to the human body was also being described to us in a very gory way by the people who was explaining it to us. So she made this artwork to
kind of like visualize the things that they were describing. So some people, they were saying that, ye poison agar khaoge, and then your body will like, your skeleton gets exposed and then it turns into gold coins and then like all kinds of things. So we've explored all of those different visuals in the film, like kuch bhi ho sakta hai. Go watch the film.
So at the end, our film was actually a work in progress. We started in 2019, and because of COVID, we all had to go back to our spaces. Because of, we would like to thank Kathmandu Triennale, we would like to thank Sidon for like bringing everything together. And because of Kathmandu Triennale itself, we could kind of wrap up this project and give us a chance to re-look at it after 2 years, after COVID, after our lives going through so much. And we were like very amused to see that there were so many parallels between this storyline and our lives itself in the process. So our film and the textile work is at Bahadur Shah Baitak. So please watch the film to kind of get a hang of what we are talking about today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So at Bahadur Shah Baitak, it's placed in the ground floor at Chhelli, and Bahadur Shah Baitak is right next to Patan Museum. So according to Newa belief, Chhelli is the where Khyak dwells. And then, so we had a discussion, and curatorially we decided to put, even though initially we had other spaces, so then we decided to put the work which is related to the ghosts and disappearing like spirits in the Chhelli where the Khyak resides. But also, like initially in Triennale, our first point of connection was Sarah, and then we had an extensive like discussion throughout years, and then I'm really glad like how this film kind of came together. But also, I would actually like to sort of a little bit of request you to explain a little bit more about the collective, because the kind of conversation we had was also, there's a lot of like variation of how to address, should we call collective or not, just the lab DAW or not, but also we were, because of the fluidity in the team itself, we were only aware of the 5 members. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the larger collective, and then if we had missed something in the process.
Yeah, so initially it was Sara Naqvi, me and Arunatpal, Chanda, and then as we kept, so we were living in Darjeeling out of a space that we had rented in, and it was like a studio space that we were kind of imagining an art residency studio kind of, but since we were very young, which I am still, like as an artist, sorry, as an artist, so we weren't capable of doing that, but we had friends who were working with similar mediums. So, and also Darjeeling being a hill station, our friends were very fascinated as to come there and work with us. So then Prakruthi came in, then she brought in her textile and film knowledge with her. Then Akshara also came in and helped us with the textile inputs. Then our animators, friends Amalindu Kaushik, Vipul Barla and Rejat they came in to bring in more visuals into these stories.
And they're from like all, like the animators, they're from Assam, from Kerala, from Jharkhand, from like everywhere.
We have a total of 20 plus artists who are co-creating with us. Because of the physical gap we had after COVID, it has been a little difficult to reconnect. So I think according to the projects that we imagine and that we have, the collective keeps coming. So it's not based only out of Darjeeling. This project, we happen to be in that space. So Dante Katha, the film, the lab collective was at Darjeeling. So we want to keep moving around, exploring different spaces, different cultures, different ideas. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. If there's any question from the audience. I think it's right time to take a short little break. I would also like to share with our audience who are joining us from online that we will be uploading the videos of the artist sharing which we have recorded, and we will upload it again. And yeah, I think it's time for a short break, and we'll welcome Karan Shrestha and Indu Tharu and Karnali Arts Centre after the break. Thank you very much. Hello. So we have 2 speakers and a performance by Karnali Arts Centre. Karnali Arts Centre, and we will also have Momo break after the performance. So please stay tuned. So, welcome again to Kurakani, KT session. We had a Kurakani session yesterday and today, and we will also have it tomorrow at Taragaon Museum, and all of you are welcome there. Now I'm going to welcome our next speaker, Karan Shrestha. His work is currently exhibiting at Nepal Art Council, and we will also have a curatorial tour after the session here. Karan will be speaking about a decade-long, the impact decade-long people's movement had in the youth here, a disposable youth and stagnated hope. Karan Shrestha's practice includes drawing, sculpture, photography, text, film and video that speaks to complex entangled relation between people, time and place, probing at the fraught rhetoric of progress, pretending to Nepal's recent history. Shrestha presents work that are an archive of physical landscape, political histories, and transient memories, and a speculative world that suspends reality, creating space to contemplate notion of the present. I'd like to welcome Karan Shrestha.
Hello. I'm going to be shamelessly reading. I think I've grown old. Memory fails me. Thank you for the introduction. I'll just start with a brief overview about my work. And then I'll go on to speak about the work that is part of the Kathmandu Triennale, which is at NAC. So working with different mediums, my approach to a drawing varies from how a photograph or a video is made or a poem written. However, this practice has become second nature, and there's no separation among modalities. The pursuit is for perspectives that supplement the proposition at large. It is to make connections and draw parallels. I like works that encapsulate complexity and holds sensitivity. And it's generally an aspiration in all I make. Yeah. So this work that's showing at NAC on the second level addresses the act of waiting. It has become a preoccupation of sorts. And it filters through much of what I make in some form or the other. It has been in the past few years. I mean, you can see the images over there, but I'll just play it over here, and I'll just read. This was in 2011, 2012, and I'll just read the diary entry while the images play. "5 years after the end of a decade-long civil war, political unrest and weak governance persist to mar the future of the newly formed Federal Republic of Nepal. The promises of the revolution have quickly dissipated. The elected Constituent Assembly that would write Nepal's first democratic constitution within 4 years failed to deliver. With governments constantly collapsing and opposing political parties regularly enforcing bans, daily life is ruptured, causing further discord by bringing the nation to a halt. Water, fuel, and gas shortages, power cuts for more than 10 hours a day add to the bleakness. Out on the streets of Kathmandu Valley, apathy and passivity spread amongst the people waiting for a new Nepal. The impasse seems never to end. What began as a photographic record of an experience grew over the years to a work registering the numerous complexities associated with the act of waiting. It is undeniably a form of structural violence committed by the system on its subject. We can stop maybe. You can see the rest of the images in the exhibit. Yeah. Yeah. I'll just play an excerpt, a 1-minute excerpt from a video that's 38 minutes, which is also there alongside the images. Yeah. 1 minute of 38 minutes. Please spend 38 minutes of your time watching this video. The footbridge was in Gangobu. It no longer stands. I would often pass this area and observe people waiting until I decided in 2017 to do a recording. Most of the people there, Gangobu sits outside along the ring road, and most of the people are from outside the valley, and they're daily wage workers or people waiting on their visas or permits to go abroad for migration work. And if you speak to the people, and if you know a little more about them, you realize what their background is and where they come from. And in the video, we see how waiting has come to be a cultural pastime in Nepal. And it is unfortunately a symptom of deep-rooted social differences that has been existing for centuries in Nepal. And you see people waiting all around all the time, and the situation is not an anomaly. It's not a one-off, because from accessing essentials to employment, to education, to compensation, legal justice, health facilities, to human rights as well, people in Nepal are made to wait. Yeah. So that's briefly discovering the act of waiting. There are other works which are part of the install, which is now on the other level in NAC, on the first level. The works consider archives and rhetoric, daily rhetoric, to confront historical categorization and social hierarchies set in precedents. And the reason for this is I intend and like to put varying perspectives when I work, and these ones put forth a call for self-determination, because there is a direct link between people or subjects made to wait and the indigenous or marginalized groups and communities and their right to self-determination. This is ongoing worldwide in terms of this right to self-determination. It took even almost, I think it was 1966 in the UN when they first tried to push forth the right to self-determination for indigenous people. They got back to it in 1982, and it was finally passed only in 1994. So we know worldwide what a struggle it has been for indigenous communities, and most of it is still not implemented. And we know in terms of where the spaces that they occupy, how difficult it has been in terms of land and everything else that comes along with it. And in Nepal's case, even the recent constitution enacted, 2015, directly violates the right to self-determination on multiple accounts. We, on looking closely, learned that the older legal systems lay buried under the new ones, and the prevailing caste hierarchies, inform the current legal framework in many ways. So I bring these together. In my practice, I like to bring these things together so that the different analogies come together, so multiple readings can emerge, because I prefer not to have the burden of a single meaning or something to be too specific all the time. I think I'll keep it short, and that's about it.
From the audience, if you have any comments, questions for the artist. Karan's work, while his observation and exploration is based in Nepal and Kathmandu, to be particular. His works are in conversation with other artists like Olga, who is also talking about the similar situation in Moscow, and also Muhammad, who's also talking about a similar situation in France. This is not an isolated sort of approach, but also incident, but also a global phenomena in a way. Thank you, Karan.
Thank you.
So connecting to Karan's critique on the deep-rooted social hierarchies, I would like to now invite Indu Tharu ji. Indu is a writer, she's an activist, she's a researcher. She's researching on her own Tharu community about the identities, the cultures, the language, politics, and histories. But she is particularly interested on a feminist lens, on the hierarchies within the indigenous community and how indigenous communities are seen as a matriarchal or portrayed as a matriarchal entities, as a structure, which in reality is not true, and how women have to be invisible are made invisible, or their efforts are made invisible within their own communities. Induji.
नमस्ते सबैजनालाई राम राम सेवा ढोक यो अवसरको लागि शिलासाजी हितमान सर र उहाँको सम्पूर्ण टिमलाई धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद छ यहाँ नेपाल आर्ट काउन्सिलमा मेरो थोरै कामहरू पनि राख्नु भएको छ मेरो कविता र केही फोटोग्राफ्सहरू यो फोटोहरू चाहिँ थरुहट थारुवान आन्दोलनको बेलाको फोटोहरू हो यसलाई सजिलै चाहिँ धेरैले थारू आन्दोलन भनेर पनि बुझ्नुहुन्छ थरुहट थारुवानको फेरि आफ्नै एउटा इतिहास र त्यसको आफ्नै एउटा राजनीति पनि छ थारुवान शब्द चाहिँ खास गरी तत्कालीन नेकपा माओवादीले जब जनयुद्ध सुरुवात गरेको थियो त्यो बेला थारुवान शब्दको उत्पत्ति वा प्रचलनमा धेरै आएको त्यो बेला चाहिँ थारुवान राज्य भनेर थारुवान राज्य प्राप्तिको लागि चाहिँ थारू मुक्ति मोर्चा संगठन बनेको थियो त्यसपछि थरुहट चाहिँ शान्ति प्रक्रिया भइसकेपछि जब माओवादीले एक किसिमले भनौं न यो थारूहरूको मुद्दालाई अलिकति स्ट्रङली पार्लियामेन्टमा र क्याबिनेटमै पनि अलि कम उठाउन थालेपछि चाहिँ थरुहट आन्दोलन भनेर त्यसरी आएको हो त्यसकारण थारुवान र थरुहट दुवैको इतिहासलाई चाहिँ जोगाउन पर्छ भनेर थरुहट थारुवान आन्दोलन नाम दिएको तर हामीले चाहिँ थारू आन्दोलन भनेर बुझ्दा हुन्छ यहाँ यो आन्दोलनमा चाहिँ धेरै थारू महिलाहरू उपस्थित हुनु भएको थियो हैन हामीले बाहिर चाहिँ थारू महिलाहरूको आन्दोलनमा कस्तो खालको योगदानहरू थियो भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ एकदमै कम मात्रामा लेखिएको बोलेको वा देखाइएको हुन्छ तर हरेक थारू आन्दोलनमा चाहिँ थारू महिलाहरू एकदमै फ्रन्ट लाइनमै गएर उहाँहरूले आफ्नो युद्ध लड्नु भएको थियो जस्तो अलिकति जनयुद्धको कुरा गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ जनयुद्धमा पनि खास गरी यो अहिले केही लेखकहरू केही साहित्यकारहरू चाहिँ थारू योद्धाहरूको बारेमा केही कुराहरू लेख्नुहुन्छ र त्यसमा चाहिँ थारू योद्धाको रूपमा खाली पुरुषहरूलाई मात्रै प्रस्तुत गर्ने त्यो मैले देखिरहेको छु तर त्यो आन्दोलनहरूमा महिलाको कति धेरै योगदान थियो भन्ने कुरालाई चाहिँ एकदमै बिर्सिएको हुन्छ फेरि थारू समाज पनि एउटा पितृसत्ताको जगमा बनेकोले महिला र पुरुषको काम छुट्टा छुट्टै नै छ, त्यो अविभाज्य रूपमै छ। त्यसकारण महिलाहरूलाई चाहिँ अलिकति घरायसी काममा मात्रै राखेको त्यो खालको सिस्टम चाहिँ अझै पनि छ। र थारू महिलाहरू एउटा त आन्दोलनमा आफै सहभागी भएर हैन बन्दुक नै बोकेर भए पनि त्यो बेला लागेको एउटा त्यो इतिहास छ, त्यो इतिहास पनि कतै पनि देखिँदैन भने अर्को चाहिँ घरमै बसेर पनि जसरी आन्दोलनलाई सहयोग पुगाएको छ महिलाहरूले त्यो कुरालाई पनि कतै उल्लेख गरेको चाहिँ पाइदैन। जस्तो महिलालाई जब खाना पकाउने काम दिन्छ, समाजले दिन्छ भने खाना पकाएर पनि एउटा महिलाले चाहिँ आन्दोलनलाई सहयोग गरिराखेको हुन्छ। आन्दोलनमा आउने आन्दोलनकारीहरूलाई खाना पकाएर पानी दिएर विभिन्न तरिकाले सहयोग गरेको हुन्छ, तर त्यो कुरालाई चाहिँ हामी कहिले पनि हेर्दैनौँ। त्यसकारण यो कुराहरूमा पनि थारू महिलाको योगदानको कुराहरू चाहिँ अलिक गहिरिएर सोच्न पर्छ कि जस्तो मलाई लागेको। र यो थारू आन्दोलन जब भयो, शान्ति प्रक्रियापछि भएको आन्दोलनमा त झन् महिलाहरू यति धेरै अगाडि आए हैन। त्यो बेला चाहिँ कस्तो भएको थियो भने यो अखण्ड सुदूरपश्चिमको जुन कन्सेप्ट थियो त्यो चाहिँ शान्ति प्रक्रियापछि मात्रै आएको हो। जब चाहिँ युद्ध थियो त्यो बेला चाहिँ थारुवान राज्यको विपक्षमा कुनै पनि नेताहरूले बोलेको सुनेको थिएन। तर शान्ति प्रक्रिया भइसकेपछि चाहिँ जब थारूहरूले थरुहट या थारुवान प्रदेशको कुराहरू उठाउन थाले, अखण्ड सुदूरपश्चिम चाहिँ एकदमै रोडमै उर्लेर थारूहरूमाथि अट्याक नै गर्ने तरिकाले उहाँहरू आउनुभयो अगाडि। र आन्दोलनमा थुप्रैलाई चाहिँ अट्याक गर्ने हैन। इभन जस्तो म धनगढीको मान्छे हो, धनगढी जहाँ म बस्छु हाम्रो ठाउँमा चाहिँ घर घरमै पसेर पनि थारू युवाहरूलाई अखण्ड सुदूरपश्चिमको खोल ओढेका भनौँ न उच्छृङ्खल जत्थाले चाहिँ एकदमै घर घरमै आएर कुट्ने त्यस्तो पनि भएको थियो। त्यो भइसकेपछि चाहिँ पुरुषहरू अगाडि आउन गाह्रो भइसकेपछि आन्दोलनको एउटा रणनीति के बन्यो भने अब महिलाहरूलाई अगाडि ल्याउन पर्छ। त्यो पनि कसरी भने थारू महिलाहरू आफ्नै जो पोसाक छ लेहेङ्गा चोलिया त्यो लगाएर चाहिँ आन्दोलनमा अगाडि आउने भन्ने खालको रणनीति बनेपछि हामी महिलाहरू आफै निस्किएको हो। त्यो बेला चाहिँ आन्दोलनको कार्यक्रम आफै गर्ने हैन, आन्दोलनको नाराहरू आफै भट्याउने, आफैले नारा लाउने, कार्यक्रम सञ्चालन आफै गर्ने, भाषण आफैले गर्ने लगायतको सबै कामहरू चाहिँ हामी महिलाहरू आफैले गरेको हो। त्यो क्रममा चाहिँ यो फोटोहरू धेरै खिचिएको छ। र यो कुरा गरिराख्दाखेरि चाहिँ मलाई यो जो कल्चरल ड्रेसको कुरा छ यसमा पनि यो बेला चाहिँ जुन यो हाम्रो पोसाक छ ट्रेडिसनल पोसाक यो चाहिँ शक्तिको रूपमा आएको थियो त्यो बेला हैन। जब यो ड्रेस लगाएर हामी महिलाहरू बजारमा निस्क्यौँ त्यो बेला हामीलाई हेर्नेहरूको र मलाई लाग्छ अलिकति त्यो एट्र्याक्ट पनि गरेको होला बाहिरको मान्छेहरूलाई। त्यसकारण यो पोसाक चाहिँ एकदमै शक्तिको रूपमा आयो त्यो बेलामा। तर जब आन्दोलन सकियो नि फेरि यो पोसाकलाई कसरी बाहिर पोर्ट्रे गरियो भने यसको महिलालाई चाहिँ सुन्दरताको रूपमा मात्रै भनेको यो पोसाक लगाएपछि चाहिँ थारू महिला सुन्दर देखिन्छ, हेर्न लायक देखिन्छ भन्ने तरिकाले मात्रै फेरि यो पोसाकलाई चाहिँ अहिले त्यसरी प्रयोग गरिएको छ। जस्तो अस्ति भर्खरै हामीले चाहिँ यो माघ थारूहरूले माघ भन्छ, माघ पर्व जसलाई चाहिँ सामान्यतया माघी भनेर पनि बुझ्नुहुन्छ। यो माघ महिनाभरि थारूहरूले एक खालको आफ्नो सिस्टम छ। जस्तो माघ 1 गते त पर्वको रूपमा मनाउने नै भयो, त्यसपछि बरघर भलमनसा चुन्ने कामहरू माघ महिनाभरि चल्छ। तर बाहिर हामीले खास गरी मिडियाहरूमा हेरौँ न, मिडिया या सोसियल मिडियाहरूमा चाहिँ थारू महिलाहरूले यो फरिया उडाएको फोटोहरू मात्रै या महिलाहरूको सजिएको फोटोहरू मात्रै चाहिँ बाहिर हामीले देख्यौँ। भनेको यो पोसाकलाई चाहिँ जब आन्दोलनमा एउटा शक्तिको रूपमा प्रयोग गरिएको थियो या शक्तिको रूपमा आएको थियो भने त्यो कुरालाई आन्दोलन सकिने बित्तिकै चाहिँ यो पोसाकलाई एक किसिमले अपमान हुने गरी चाहिँ बाहिर देखिएको थियो। त्यसकारणले यो कुराहरूमा पनि हामीले अत्यन्तै ध्यान दिन जरुरी छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ। थारू महिलाहरूलाई चाहिँ यो पोसाकसँग जोडेर हैन पोसाकलाई एउटा आन्दोलनको रूपमा मात्रै नहेरेर चाहिँ खाली सौन्दर्यसँग मात्रै जोडिदिने कुरा चाहिँ त्यो एक किसिमले गलत नै हो हैन। र महिलाहरूले चाहिँ यो आन्दोलन गरिसकेपछि के पाए भन्ने कुरा पनि रहन्छ। अब हामीलाई थाहा छ थारू आन्दोलन हुँदाखेरि टिकापुर घटना घट्न गयो, त्यो कहाँ के किन कसरी भन्ने कुरातिर हामी जाँदैनौँ, तर त्यो घटना अगाडि र पछाडि थारू महिलाहरूमाथि भएको जो अत्याचार छ नि त्यो चाहिँ एकदमै राज्य आतंकले खास गरी मच्चाएको थारूहरूमाथि बर्बरता बर्साएको जुन कुरा छ त्यो कुरालाई पनि कसैले त्यो महिला लेन्सबाट चाहिँ कसैले हेर्दै हेरेन। जस्तो हामीले कति धेरै रिपोर्टहरू हेर्छौँ हैन, एमनेस्टी इन्टरनेसनलको रिपोर्ट छ, यसमा ह्युमन राइट्स वाचको रिपोर्ट छ। उनीहरूले चाहिँ जो चाहिँ जेलभित्र पर्नुभयो या कति धेरै थारू पुरुषहरू इन्डियामा विस्थापित हुन परेको त्यो कुरालाई चाहिँ एकदमै स्ट्रङली ल्यायो, जुन राम्रो कुरा पनि हो। तर कुनै पनि सङ्घ संस्थाहरूले या महिला अधिकारको कुरा गर्नेहरूले त्यो घटनामा चाहिँ महिलाहरूको के थियो त, के भयो महिलाहरूलाई भन्ने कुरा कसैले पनि लिँदैन। त्यहाँ महिलाहरूमाथि चाहिँ यति धेरै ज्यादती गरिएको छ हैन, उनीहरूमाथि डर त्रास धम्की दिने कुराहरू एउटा भयो। अनि अब पुरुषहरू त प्राय इन्डियामा भागेको छ त्यो आतंकले गर्दा भने महिला एक्लै घरमा भएको बेला उनीहरूलाई त्यो बन्दुक चाहिँ एकदमै छातीमै ताकेर हैन त्यो खालको कुराहरू त्यो यो कुराहरूको गवाहीहरू चाहिँ अझै पनि त्यो गाउँहरूमा भेट्न सकिन्छ हामी गयौँ भने। र त्यो हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो टिकापुरमा जो महिलाहरूलाई त्यस्तो भयो र यो कुरालाई चाहिँ मैले कसरी हेर्छु भने थारू महिलाहरूमाथि जुन आतंक हुन्छ नि यो चाहिँ कुनै एउटा अपराधिक मानसिकता बोकेको पुरुषले गर्ने कुरा मात्रै होइन हैन, कि एउटा महिला हिँडिराखेको छ, अँध्यारो छ, सुनसान छ, त्यो मौकाको फाइदा उठाइहालौँ भन्ने सम्मको मात्रै यो अपराध होइन। यो चाहिँ एकदमै राज्य निर्देशित हैन, त्यो पनि शक्तिशाली राज्य निर्देशित आतंक चाहिँ त्यो रहन्छ। त्यस कारणले चाहिँ जो हामी एक खालको उच्च जातिको महिलाहरू जो हामी बन्छौँ उनीहरूले भोग्ने कुरा र आदिवासी थारू सीमान्तकृत महिलाले भोग्ने जो हिंसाको कुरा छ यसलाई बुझ्नको लागि चाहिँ अपराधिक मानसिकता भएको व्यक्तिले गरेको अपराध र राज्य निर्देशित अपराध यो कुरालाई छुट्याएर पनि हेर्न अत्यन्त जरुरी छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ। अनि मात्रै चाहिँ हामी सही तरिकाले थारू महिलामाथि या सीमान्तकृत महिलाहरूमाथि हुने गरेको हिंसाको कुरालाई अलि चाहिँ क्लियरली हामी हेर्न सक्छौँ जस्तो लाग्छ। र थोरै चाहिँ यो इन्टरसेक्सनालिटीमा थारू महिलाहरू कहाँ छ भन्ने कुरा पनि म थोरै राख्न चाहन्छु हैन। थारू महिलाहरूले यो सबै गर्दाखेरि हाम्रो फोटोहरू या हाम्रो समाचारहरू चाहिँ कुनै पनि मिडियाहरूमा आएन के त्यो बेलामा हैन, कसैको चाहिँ ध्यान नै पुगेन। र यो भइसकेपछि पनि अलिकति यो क्षेत्रमा काम गर्ने अब मानव अधिकारको संस्थाहरू महिला अधिकारको संस्थाहरू उहाँहरूको अन्वेषणको केन्द्रमा पनि थारू महिलाहरू कहिले पनि परेन। तर जब हामी उहाँ महिलाहरूसँग गएर कुरा गऱ्यौँ भने उहाँहरूको भगाइ फेरि छुट्टै छ। हामी इन्टरसेक्सनालिटी बुझ्ने जति पनि हामी छौँ हामीलाई थाहा छ हैन, यो एउटा लेयर्सको कुराहरू त्यसलाई छुट्याएर हेर्न कति धेरै जरुरी छ। फेरि थारू समुदायभित्रै पनि हैन परशुनारायण चौधरीको घरको महिलाहरू र एउटा कमैया बस्तीमा बस्ने थारू महिलाको स्थिति त एउटै होइन। यो कुराहरू पनि हेर्न जरुरी छ। भनेको हाम्रै समाजभित्र पनि समस्या त छ। जस्तो मैले अघि नै पनि भन्ने थारू समाज पनि एउटा पितृसत्तात्मक भ्याल्युमा बनेको समाज भएकोले हामीभित्रै पनि बर्गर भलमन्सा गुरुवा जस्तो कुराहरूमा पनि जहिले पुरुषहरू मात्रै अगाडि रहने महिलाहरू कहिले पनि इभन कि महिलाहरू त्यो भलमन्सा चुन्ने प्रक्रियामा पनि सहभागी गराइँदैन थियो। अहिले भर्खर कैलाली र कञ्चनपुरको केही गाउँहरूमा थारू महिला भलमन्साहरू अहिले आउनु भएको छ। तर उहाँहरू पनि स्वायत्त रूपमा काम गर्न कति सक्षम हुनुहुन्छ भन्ने कुरालाई हेर्न पनि जरुरी छ। त्यसकारण थारू समाजभित्रको यो खालको आफ्नै पुरुषले महिलालाई गर्ने विभेदको कुराहरू त छँदैछ। जस्तो भलमन्सा र बर्घर भनेको गाउँको मुखिया हुन्छ, त्यो मुखिया भनेको त उसको एउटा पद भयो, पद भएपछि उसँग शक्ति पनि भयो। पद र शक्ति जस्तो कुरा चाहिँ पुरुषले ओगट्ने, गुरुवा भनेको अब तन्त्र मन्त्र जान्ने अलिकति ज्ञानसँग जोडिएको कुरा, अनि पद शक्ति र ज्ञान सबै कुराहरू चाहिँ पुरुषको मुठीमा रहने, र महिलाले चाहिँ अलिकति ज्ञानको कुराहरू या गुरुवा सिक्न खोजे भने उसलाई चाहिँ बोक्सीको आरोप लगाउने हैन। भनेको महिला चाहिँ ज्ञानसँग जोडिनु नै हुँदैन, ज्ञानसँग जोडियो भने महिला बोक्सी हुन्छ, या ज्ञानको प्रयोग चाहिँ महिलाले सही तरिकाले गर्न जान्दैन, सदुपयोग गर्न जान्दैन भन्ने कुराहरू त्यो छ। अब हामीले यो कुरा गर्दाखेरि फेरि त्यो एक खालको एउटा तबका पनि छ नि जसले चाहिँ अलिकति बकमफुसे तर्कहरू गर्छ। त्यसो भए आफ्नै समाजभित्रको पहिले असमानताहरू चाहिँ हटाऊ, त्यसपछि हामीसँग आएर अन्य के अरे यो असमानताको कुराहरू गर न भन्ने खालको एउटा तबका पनि छ। जस्तो कि दलित अधिकारको कुरा गर्ने बित्तिकै चाहिँ दलितभित्रै पनि छुवाछुट छ नि, पहिले आफ्नो छुवाछुट त अन्त्य गर त्यसपछि हामी कहाँ आउनु भन्ने खालको यो खालको कुरा गर्ने मान्छेहरू पनि छ। तर यो कुरा त हामीले एउटा त राज्य सत्तासँग हामीले हाम्रो अधिकार माग्ने कुरा रह्यो, त्यसमा हामी एकदमै निडर भएर हैन निरन्तर रूपमा लागिराखेकै छौँ। एउटा कुरा त्यो भयो भने त्यो सँगसँगै आफ्नै समाजभित्रको पनि पितृसत्तालाई ढाल्नको लागि हैन एउटा समान समाज निर्माण गर्नको लागि यो सबै कुरालाई चाहिँ समानान्तर तरिकाले अगाडि लग्नु छ। फेरि यति मात्रै हैन, जस्तो अघि मैले जो एउटा वर्गको उदाहरण जो दिए नि परशुनारायण चौधरीको घरको महिला र कमैया समुदायको घरको महिलाको स्थिति, त्यहाँ फेरि वर्ग पनि जोडिएर आउँछ। त्यसकारण यति धेरै कुराहरू छ हामीले लड्नु पर्ने हैन। त्यसकारण यो सबै कुराहरूमा मलाई लाग्छ हामी लागि परेकै छौँ। यो कार्यक्रमले पनि यो खालको कुराहरूलाई अगाडि ल्याउनमा र योसँग लड्नको लागि एकदमै राम्रो अभियान चाहिँ चलाउनु भएको छ हैन। र मेरो समय कति छ त्यसपछि मलाई अब धेरै कुरा मैले भनिसकेँ जस्तो लाग्छ, त्यस्तो धेरै चाहिँ छैन। तर यो जब आन्दोलन भयो नि, आन्दोलन जस्तो जनयुद्ध हुँदाखेरि पनि माओवादीले आतंककारी भनेको थियो राज्यले, अनि त्यो आतंककारी भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ तराईको सबै थारूहरूलाई आतंककारी भन्यो, माओवादी भन्यो। अनि त्यो माओवादीको नाममा थारू अनुहार देख्ने बित्तिकै हैन हामीले बोल्ने बित्तिकै, किनभने हाम्रो त अनुहारले थारू हो भन्ने चिनिन्छ, हाम्रो टोनले चिनिन्छ थारू हो भनेर, त्यो चिन्ने बित्तिकै चाहिँ थारू भनेपछि माओवादी आतंककारी भनेर यति धेरै यातना हैन हत्या बेपत्ता पार्ने कामहरू भएको छ थारू समुदायमा। अझ त्यसमा पनि महिलाहरूको कुरा गर्ने हो भने बर्दियाको सम्झना चौधरीहरू जसलाई चाहिँ गर्भ अवस्थामा उहाँलाई चाहिँ सामूहिक बलात्कार गरेर गोली ठोकेर हत्या गरिएको छ, यस्तो थुप्रै थारू महिलाहरू हुनुहुन्छ। त्यसपछि चाहिँ त्यो भइसकेपछि जब जनआन्दोलन भयो 62-63 सालको, त्यसमा त हामी सबै सक्रिय भएर लाग्यौँ र त्यो आन्दोलनले चाहिँ नेपालको पुनर्संरचनाको परिकल्पना गरेको थियो र हामी धेरै प्रकारले नयाँ भएको पनि हो। हामी गणतन्त्रमा गयौँ हैन, धर्मनिरपेक्ष नेपाल बन्यो र सहभागिता समानुपातिक समावेशिताको कुरामा पनि हामी अगाडि गयौँ। तर साँच्चै थारू महिलाको लागि के नयाँ नेपाल बन्न सकेको हो त? के चाहिँ नयाँ भयो त व्यवस्था भन्दाखेरि त टिकापुरमा जो घटना भयो त्यसलाई हेर्ने हो भने त नयाँ त केही पनि भएन, बरु राज्य चाहिँ झन् बर्बर भएर आयो। त्यहाँ टिकापुरको महिलाहरूसँग कुरा गर्नुभयो भने उहाँहरूको अनुभवले के भन्छ भने जुन खालको राज्य आतंक हामीमाथि भएको छ यो चाहिँ द्वन्द्वकालमा पनि भएको थिएन भन्नुहुन्छ कि। टिकापुरको घटना तपाईँहरूले सुन्नुभएको होला, महिनौँ दिनसम्म कर्फ्यू लाग्दाखेरि कर्फ्यू थारूका निम्ति मात्रै लगाइएको छ। कर्फ्यूका बेला थारूहरूको घर एफएम पसल छानी छानी आगो लगाइएको छ हैन। यो खालको बर्बरता त द्वन्द्वकालमा थिएन। तर टिकापुर घटना पछि त्यो भनेको जनआन्दोलन अर्थात् शान्ति प्रक्रियामा गइसकेपछि भएको छ भनेपछि त नयाँ व्यवस्थाले पनि थारू समुदायलाई थारू महिलाहरूलाई त केही पनि नयाँ दिन सकेन नि हैन। अनि थारूहरूलाई आतंककारी घोषणा गरिदिने बित्तिकै चाहिँ सबै कुरा गर्न पायो राज्यले हैन। सुरक्षा प्रदान गर्ने नाममा थारूहरूलाई गिरफ्तार गर्न पायो, थारू महिलाहरूमाथि यौन हिंसा गर्न पायो र त्यो गरेको कुरालाई वैधानिक बनाउन पनि पाइयो र सरकारले आफूसँग भएको जति पनि स्रोत साधन सञ्चार प्रसारका माध्यमहरू छ त्यो सबैलाई प्रयोग गरेर थारूहरूको आन्दोलनलाई तुहाउने, थारूहरूलाई चाहिँ आतंककारीको रूपमा प्रस्तुत गर्ने अनि अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय रूपमा पनि थारू आन्दोलनलाई बदनाम गराइदिने कुराहरू चाहिँ राज्यले एकदमै राम्रो तरिकाले त्यो गरेर देखायो। त्यसकारण जो हामी चाहिँ एउटा अलि फरक खालले सोच्ने मान्छेहरू छौँ या जो हामी समानताको पक्षमा वकालत गर्ने, कलम चलाउने, बोल्ने या कुनै न कुनै माध्यमबाट हामी जोडिएका छौँ, उहाँहरू सबैलाई चाहिँ मेरो अनुरोध के छ भने यहाँ धेरै जसो महिलाहरू हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँहरूलाई चाहिँ उहाँहरू मात्रै होइन यो फोटोमा नभएको महिलाहरू पनि धेरैलाई चाहिँ जो नेपाली बोल्न सक्नुहुन्न हैन, उहाँहरूले नेपाली बोल्न नसके पनि, उहाँहरू कहिले स्कुलमा नगए पनि उहाँहरूमा निहित केही आदिवासी ज्ञानहरू छन् र ती ज्ञानहरू चाहिँ अत्यन्तै अर्ग्यानिक छन् र जो यो हामीले बाहिर मिडियामा या बाहिर जो हामी देख्छौँ सम्पादन गरिएका समाचारहरू हैन, थारू महिलाहरूको भोगाईलाई चाहिँ एकदमै त्यो ट्विस्ट गरेर लेख्ने, बाहिर ल्याउने कुराहरू त्यो सम्पादित विकृत विचारभन्दा एकदमै अर्ग्यानिक ज्ञान भएका यी महिलाहरूलाई आएर तपाईहरुले भेट्नुस् र उहाँहरूको कथालाई हामी अगाडि ल्याउँ भन्ने पनि म अनुरोध गर्न चाहन्छु। र जब थारू महिलाहरूको कुरा बाहिर समाचारमा आयो भने कस्तो खालको कुराहरू बाहिर आउँछ भने जो महिलाले चाहिँ देशभक्ति मिसनमा अलिकति हुन्छ नि त्यो देशभक्ति मिसनलाई प्रोत्साहन गर्ने खालको या चाहिँ जो महिलाले राज्यले गर्ने आतंकलाई छलेर राज्यको आतंक यहाँनिर मलाई भन्न आएन, अलिकति राज्यले गर्ने आतंकलाई चाहिँ अलिकति ढाकछोप गर्ने त्यो राज्यको राजनीतिबाट लाई ढाकछोप गरेर चाहिँ अगाडि आएको जो महिलाहरू छ, अर्थात् जसले यो जो व्यवस्था छ यो व्यवस्थालाई हामीले राम्रो भनिराखेका छैनौँ, यो नराम्रो व्यवस्थालाई चाहिँ व्यवस्थामा पनि थारू महिला अगाडि आउन सक्यो है हैन। जस्तो कोही सांसद बन्नु भएको छ, जस्तो कमलरी समूह भएको कुनै व्यक्ति सांसद बन्यो भने यो व्यवस्थाले उहाँलाई यहाँ पुगायो भनेर यो व्यवस्थालाई प्रेज गर्न लगाउने हामीलाई त्यो खालको महिलाहरूको स्टोरीहरू मात्रै बाहिर आउँछ। तर त्यो महिलाहरू जो चाहिँ राज्य आतंकबाट एकदमै पीडित भए, राज्य आतंकको गवाही छन्, ती महिलाहरूको कुरा चाहिँ कहिले पनि बाहिर आउँदैन। राज्यको विकृत अनुहारलाई पहिचानमा ल्याउन क्षमता राख्ने स्टोरीहरू चाहिँ बाहिर कहिले पनि आउँदैन। त्यसकारणले त्यो कुराहरू चाहिँ अगाडि आओस् भन्ने उद्देश्य पनि हो मेरो। र मलाई लाग्छ मेरो कामलाई चाहिँ तपाईहरुले त्यो किसिमले हेर्नुभयो भने मलाई एकदमै खुसी हुनेछ। र मेरो कविता पनि एउटा राखिएको छ यहाँ एक्जिबिसनमा, म अन्तिममा चाहिँ एउटा कविता सुनाउन चाहन्छु। मातृभाषामा मुस्कुराउन जानेको भएर सानो छँदा, मातृभाषामा मुस्कुराउन जानेको भएर सानो छँदा कक्षा कोठाको लास्ट बेन्चमा बस्नु परेको अनुभव छ मसँग। सत्ताको प्रणालीको ढाँचाभित्र आफू पनि समेटिन, यो सत्ताको प्रणालीको ढाँचाभित्र आफू पनि समेटिन भाषा अवरोधको सामना गर्नु परेको अनुभव पनि छ मसँग। सत्ताको एकल भाषालाई मनमानी व्यवस्थित गर्न सशस्त्र शक्ति, सशस्त्र सिपाहीको शक्ति र शिक्षकको ज्ञानले स्थायित्व प्रदान गर्न जबरजस्त रूपमा ममाथि लादिएको भाषा बोल्न खोजे जब कवि उज्ज्वला महर्जनले भने जस्तै अब मेरो थारुटोन फुस्किन्छ, अब मेरो थारुटोन फुस्किन्छ को डरै डरमा जब मेरो थारुटोन फुस्कियो, जब मेरो थारू टोन फुस्कियो सत्ताधारीहरूको भाषाका नातेदारहरूले मलाई मजाक बनाए। मलाई मजाक बनाए। मेरो भाषालाई सताइरहेको सत्ताले, मेरो भाषालाई सताइरहेको सत्ताले आङ छोप्ने मेरो लेहंगा र फरिया, पेट भर्ने मेरो ढिक्री र खरिया सबैमाथि नियन्त्रण गरेपछि सिके मैले सडकको भाषा बोल्न। सिके मैले सडकको भाषा बोल्न। सडकको भाषाले म भित्र आश्चर्यको आत्मविश्वास दिलायो। सडकको भाषाले म भित्र आश्चर्यको आत्मविश्वास दिलायो। मेरो सो निर्माणमा गौरवान्वित बनायो र सिकायो सत्तालाई सडकबाट हाक्का हाकी हाँक्दिन अनि म हौसिए सडकको भाषा बोल्न। सडकको भाषा सबसे ज्यादा खतरनाक हुन्छ साथी। सडकको भाषा सबसे ज्यादा खतरनाक हुन्छ साथी। यो जतिको पेचिलो अर्को हुँदैन। शासक अटेरी भए सडक निर्णायक भइजान्छ। किनभने सडक पेटीमा सुत्नेहरूको हो। सडक आफ्नो केही नहुनेहरूको हो। सडक श्रमिक माथि हुने शोषणको सबूत हो। सडकले सर्वहाराहरूले सजाएको सपना बुझेको हुन्छ र बुझेको हुन्छ सत्ताको सर्वसत्तावाद र जानेको हुन्छ सत्तालाई गला हत्याएर ढाल्न। सडक सर्वोच्च बन्छ जब सडकको भाषा संगठित हुन्छ। सडकमा निहित शक्तिले बडे साहेबहरूलाई बक्सदैन। सडकमा निहित शक्तिले बडे साहेबहरूलाई बक्सदैन। सडकमा निहित शक्तिले म नै राज्य हुँ भन्नेलाई सुली चढायो। त्यसैले सडक शक्तिहीनहरूको शक्ति हो। न्याय चेतनाको उभार भर्ने सडकको भाषा सुनौला सन्ततिलाई सुम्पिनु छ। जसले बडो गर्वका साथ भन्ने छ मेरो मातृभाषा सडक भाषा हो। सडक भाषा अर्थात् विद्रोहको भाषा। सडक भाषा अर्थात् प्रतिरोधको भाषा। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद इन्दुजी। इन्दुजीसँग केही प्रश्नहरू छ, केही छ भने, केही कुरा गर्नु छ भने अलिकति केही पोइन्ट मात्र। तपाईँको त्यत्रो पावरफुल कुरालाई त मैले सबै संक्षिप्त रूपमा त भन्न सक्दिनँ, तर केही सानो पोइन्टहरू मात्र, एउटा दुईटा कुराहरू चाहिँ म अलिकति ट्रान्सलेट गर्न खोजेको। Indujiको, you can also find Induji's work in her contribution to Muktik Dagar and Nilambit Nimanda that she has written. Some of the points, I mean, it's so intense and emotional and it's full of like resistance. I cannot even translate it. It's just like few sentences that I'm trying to translate. So it begins by addressing the fact that, of course, Tharu indigenous community is not like matriarchal as it is portrayed. It is super patriarchal, and the proofs such as Burger system, Gurua system is the proof of it. Burger is a system of it's a governance system where there's an election system and a chief of a village is elected, and Gurua is we can say as a high priest or a shaman, but then she's addressing and pointing out that this position holds, of course, power, and only men can have that space, not a woman. She also points out that like look at the work division in the Tharu society and what kind of work women are addressed and what kind of work men are addressed. And in the revolution from People's War to recent Tikapur Kanda, which is a very, like, it's a black day in the history of Nepal that you can Google as well. It just become too long if you start to explain it. Like how women's labor has been intentionally erased, and again because of the patriarchal structure, and also by the government also. Women have taken arms, women have fought, women have gone in the field, they've fought, but not only that, cooking the food and serving the fighters are also a form of labor that is erased, like a lot of other labors which has been erased, which is of the woman. The Tharu dress, which you saw in the photographs, when the Tikapur incident happened, all the men were chased down by the government and they had to hide. They were brutally beaten down. They had to run away. And then when the entire village became almost empty of the men, it was the collectives of the women who took like matter on their own hands, and then they went on the street on the protest, and then the attire lehenga became a symbol of power. It was an intentional use of the attire. It became symbol of power, it became symbol of resistance. But when the Andolan was over, later on how it was portrayed was, it was just related to a beauty only, like the power was stripped away, and beauty or a decoration. And this is something in a feminist indigenous movement in Nepal, a lot of indigenous feminists has addressed the dichotomy of woman's attire and its power and how it's portrayed. Like people like Ronika Koi, who's in the room, and Karan Shrestha also has written like articles on it. And then Induji is also again pointing it out, and how media and reports are written, and how women's agency is entirely erased again, and women's lens is also again entirely erased in also reports like Amnesty International, etc., in national newspapers and also international newspapers. And it is very, and the kind of people who are made visible, the kind of women who are made visible are the women who might have like a nationalistic view, or who are not addressing the entire truth, and women who are expressing the truth of violence, then their voices are again erased. And Induji points out it's important to have a critical analysis on what kind of violence happens to what kind of people, and it is directly related to the casteism. And when we see the kind of violence happening targeted towards the woman, like rape, then you have to see it is just because of the criminal attitude, or it is being sponsored from an organization or a government, in fact. I'm actually these are just some of the few points that Induji has powerfully addressed.
तपाईको त्यो कविता चाहिँ एकदम पावरफुल आयो, यो भन्दा अगाडि सुन्न पाएको थिएन, खुसी पनि लाग्यो, बधाई पनि छ, यसले एउटा ऊर्जा थप्छ भन्ने मलाई लागेको छ। मेरो प्रश्न चाहिँ जस्तै 2012 मा पहिलो संविधान सभाको चुनाव अथवा पहिला संविधान सभा भङ्ग भयो, त्यो किन भयो कसो भयो एकातिर व्याख्या गर्न सकिन्छ होला। 2015 मा टिकापुर घटना घट्यो, अब तपाईको कविताले भनेको जस्तो सडकको विद्रोहको भाषाको सवालमा चाहिँ मैले बुझ्न चाहेको कुरा चाहिँ यति वर्ष गइसके र अब नेपालीहरूको हातमा चाहिँ संविधान पनि नयाँ आइसक्यो एक थान। त्यो पहिलो संविधान सभाको चुनाव अथवा पहिला संविधान सभाले चाहिरहेको जस्तो भाषिक अधिकार आदिवासी जनजाति आन्दोलनको सवालमा त्यो अधिकार चाहिँ अब काठमाडौँमा बसेका मानिसहरूले अभ्यस्त हुँदै गइरहेको यो नयाँ संविधान लाई चाहिँ फेरि अब त्यसले त एड्रेस गरेको छैन अझैसम्म पनि भन्ने कुरा पनि छ हैन। अब यो अभ्यस्ततासँग चाहिँ तपाईले भनेको विद्रोहको भाषा चाहिँ कति ठुलो चर्कोसँग बोल्नुपर्छ होला आगामी दिनमा। यो बीचमा 2015 मा तपाई आफै पनि त्यही हुनु भएको भएर त्यसपछि अब त्यो घटनाले निम्ति आएको त धेरै कुराहरू छ, अझै पनि राज्यबन्दीको रूपमा कयौं थारू भित्रै छन् हैन। त्यसलाई चाहिँ कसरी त्यो भाषाको त्यो विद्रोहको भाषा चाहिँ कति उच्च आवाजमा घन्काइनु पर्छ होला अथवा तपाईको अब्जर्भेसनमा चाहिँ अहिले फिल्डमा चाहिँ कस्तो छ त्यो मलाई चाहिँ ठ्याक्कै 2012 पछिको बाट आज हामी 10 वर्षमा उभिया छौं हैन। हामीले चाहेको अधिकार चाहिँ सडकबाट पनि बढाएको अवस्था जस्तो जुन देखिया छ यसलाई कसरी लिनुहुन्छ र त्यो भाषाको इन्टेन्सिटीको सवालमा मलाई एकछिन भनिदिनु न कस्तो हुन सक्छ होला अब। थ्यांक यू।
मलाई चाहिँ के लाग्छ भने यो विद्रोहको भाषा बोल्ने एकजना मात्रै मान्छे भए पनि त्यसले झिल्को बाल्छ, त्यो एउटा सानो झिल्कोले आगो बाल्छ भन्ने कुरामा चाहिँ म विश्वास गर्छु हैन। र अब सडक आन्दोलन गर्ने, सत्तालाई चुनौती दिने कुराहरू एक्लो व्यक्तिले पनि गर्न सक्छ, तर त्यो पर्याप्त हुँदैन, संगठन चाहिन्छ हैन। हामी भनेको त्यो विद्रोहको भाषा बोल्ने जस्तो धेरैजना भयो भने चाहिँ अलि सहज हुन्छ हामीले सोचेको जस्तो समाज निर्माण गर्न या हामीले सोचेको जस्तो सत्ता निर्माण गर्नको लागि। अब यसमा धेरै टेक्निकल कुराहरू होला, कतिसम्मको त्यो आवाज कति माथिल्लो स्तरमा जानुपर्छ या चाहिँ कतिजना मान्छेहरू जम्मा भयो भने मात्रै चाहिँ हाम्रो उद्देश्य पुरा हुन सक्छ भन्ने कुराहरू। तर मलाई चाहिँ तपाईहरु जस्तो साथीहरू देख्यो भने चाहिँ मलाई एकदमै आँट आउँछ कि हैन, हामी चाहिँ सक्छौं भन्ने लाग्छ। र अहिले कैलालीमा भनेको थारू एरियामा हेर्यो भने अब म कैलालीको भएकोले चाहिँ कैलाली आइहाल्छ कि मुखमा। अझै पनि त्यो जुन खालको शोषण दमन थियो नि थारूहरूमाथि, जस्तो हिजोको दिनमा पढे लेखेको थारूहरू थिएन, अब 100 रुपैयाँ दियो भने ल्याप्चे लगायो, त्यसलाई कति लाख बनायो, 1000 बनायो, अनि एउटा पुस्ता पनि हैन त्यो 100 रुपैयाँ तिर्न नसकेर पुस्तौं पुस्ता हो नि त कमैया बसेको, कमलरी बसेको। भनेको मान्छेले 100 रुपैयाँ एउटा आफ्नो जीवनभरि पनि तिर्न नसक्ने कस्तो खालको ऋण थियो त हैन। ठ्याक्कै यो अहिले नभइहाले पनि अहिले चाहिँ मैले अस्ति भर्खरै एउटा न्यूज देखेँ, त्यो चाहिँ मेन स्ट्रिम मिडियामै आएको थियो। यो कति ब्याज लियो अनि उसको बिगौं बिगा जग्गा चाहिँ कुनै त्यहाँको ठुला ठालुहरूले चाहिँ बेचिदिए भन्ने कुरा। भनेको यो त मेन स्ट्रिम मिडियामा देखेको एउटा समाचार मात्रै हो भने भित्र त झन् कति होला जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ कि हैन। त्यसकारण यो विभेदहरू अझै पनि विद्यमान नै छ, जुन कुराहरू हामी अब रिसर्चर, राइटर, पोएट साथीहरूले यो कुराहरूलाई ल्याउन जरुरी नै छ। तर म चाहिँ एकदमै आशावादी मान्छे हो। म आश राख्छु कि हामीले सोचेको जस्तो समाज, सत्ता हामी एक दिन निर्माण गर्न सक्छौँ।
हेलो, थ्याङ्क यू इन्दु, तपाईको एकदमै खतरा कुराहरूको लागि हैन। कति कुरा चाहिँ एकदम नोट गर्न पर्ने कुरा नै छ हैन। अनि मेबी त्यो चाहिँ विभिन्न चरणमा विभिन्न रूपमा चाहिँ इग्नोर पनि भइरा पनि हुन सक्छ अनि भइ पनि राछ नभएको हैन हैन त्यो मल्टी लेभलमा हुने अनि डिफरेन्ट फेसमा हुने खालको एक्सक्लुजनको कुराहरू जुन तपाईले भन्नुहुन्छ भएको थियो त्यो पनि कस्तो एकदमै पावरफुल लागिरहेको थियो अनि प्लस त्यो इन्डिजिनियस कम्युनिटी अथवा इन्टरसेक्सनल हाम्रो आइडेन्टिटी सँगै आइरहँदाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो एक्सपिरियन्सेसहरू त्यो स्टोरीहरू त्यो रियालिटिजहरू चाहिँ कसरी आउँछ भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ आई थिंक गफ गर्न एकदमै पर्ने कुराहरू जुन चाहिँ उठिरहेको थियो अनि त्यसको लागि चाहिँ थ्यांक यू सो मच अनि मलाई अलिकति मेबी क्वेसन चाहिँ होइन अनि त्यसमा अझै कुरा सेयर गर्न मिल्छ कि भनेर के चाहिँ लागिरहेको थियो भने अब यो मेन स्ट्रिम यो मोमेन्टमै पनि अथवा जहाँ पनि भनौँ न अलिकति बिगर ह्युमन राइट्स मुभमेन्टभित्र चाहिँ वुमेन राइट्सको कुरा गऱ्यो भनेदेखि त्यहाँ क्वेसन आउँछ होइन अनि अर्कै खालको एक्सपिरियन्स च्यालेन्जेसहरू चाहिँ आइरहेको हुन्छ अनि त्यसरी नै इन्डिजिनियस कम्युनिटी एउटा त्यो आइडेन्टिटी मुभमेन्टमा लागिरहेको एउटा कम्युनिटी हो नि त जुन चाहिँ एकदमै मल्टिलेभलमा स्ट्रगल गरिरहेछ अनि त्यो भइरहँदा चाहिँ अब त्यो इन्डिजिनियस आइडेन्टिटी मुभमेन्टभित्र पनि जुन खालको तपाईँले चाहिँ बोल्डली अनि एकदमै ओपनली यो वुमेन आइडेन्टिटी होइन त्यसमा पनि अझ अरू मार्जिनलाइज्ड आइडेन्टिटिजहरूको कुरा विदिन त्यो इन्डिजिनियस मुभमेन्टभित्रको क्वेसन गरिरहँदाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो डे टु डे लाइफमा हुनसक्छ होला अथवा अलिकति फर्मल स्पेसमा पनि कस्तो खालको एक्सपिरियन्सेसहरू आइरहेछ अथवा एक्सक्लुजन हुनसक्छ होला कति ठाउँमा चाहिँ होइन अनि त्यो चाहिँ अलिकति सुन्न पायो भनेदेखि चाहिँ त्यो पनि डे टु डे रूपमा देखे पनि त्यस्तो नोटिसेबल होइन तर त्यो उसको इम्प्याक्ट चाहिँ फेरि धेरै हुन्छ नि त सो मेबी अलिकति त्यस्तो खालको एक्सपिरियन्स अथवा चाहिँ इन्साइट्सहरू चाहिँ आयो भनेदेखि त्यो चाहिँ इन्ट्रेस्टिङ नै हुन्छ होला सबैलाई भन्ने जस्तो लाग्यो थ्याङ्क यू सो मच पोइम चाहिँ एकदम दामी थियो
धन्यवाद कविताजी यस्तो भगाइहरू कति धेरै छन् हैन कति हो कति जस्तो मैले चाहिँ एउटा मेरो लेख प्रकाशित भएको थियो कि यो हाम्रो थारू समुदायभित्रै चाहिँ पितृसत्ता कति गहिरो गरी बसेको छ भन्ने कुरालाई लिएर लेख्दाखेरि चाहिँ थारू केही अग्रजहरूले नै मलाई एकदमै त्यो हुन्छ नि अलि नेगेटिभ तरिकाले कमेन्टहरू गर्नुभएको त्यो चाहिँ उहाँहरूको भनाइ चाहिँ के थियो भने अहिले त हामीले समग्र थारूहरूको अधिकारको कुरा गर्ने हो कहाँ अहिले त्यो थारू महिलाको कुरा गर्न थाल्यो भने त आन्दोलन छेदविच्छेद हुन्छ नि अहिले त आन्दोलनलाई एकीकृत गर्नुपर्ने बेलामा अहिले थारू महिलाको कुराहरू राखिराखौँ न पछि गर्दै गरौँला टाइपको कुराहरू के तर यो कुराहरू चाहिँ मलाई एकदमै चित्तै बुझ्दैन हैन समग्र थारूहरूको अधिकारको कुरा छँदैछ त्यसमा महिलाको कुरा पनि सँगसँगै आउनुपर्छ त्यसमा भाषाको कुरा पनि सँगसँगै आउनुपर्छ संस्कृति जोगाउने कुरा लगायतको सबै कुरालाई चाहिँ एउटा प्याकेजमा लानुपर्छ यो होइन कि पहिले थरुहट प्राप्त गरौँ अनि बल्लहरू कुराहरू कति चरणको आन्दोलन गर्ने हामीले हैन त्यसकारणले एउटै आन्दोलनमा सबै कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ सँगसँगै लानुपर्छ भन्ने हो अनि अब त्यसमा चाहिँ मैले अलि नितान्त रूपमा मेरो आफ्नो भोगाई मेरो आमाको भोगाई मेरो हजुरआमाको भोगाई हामीले भोगेको त एउटै नै हो हैन अब हजुरआमाले पढ्न पाउनु भएन मैले पढ्न पाएँ तर हिजो घरको सबै घरायसी काममा हजुरआमाको एकदमै सक्रियता थियो मेरो आमाको पनि त्यही थियो मेरो पनि त्यही हो हैन मैले पनि घरमा खाना पकाउनै पर्छ भाडा धुनै पर्छ अनि मलाई झन् डबल भार भयो जस्तो लाग्छ कि म घरको काम पनि गरिरहेको छु बाहिरको काम पनि गरिरहेको छु तर त्यही नै र पुरुषले चाहिँ बाहिर काम मात्रै गर्छ जब म घरबाट बाहिर निस्केँ पुरुषले त घरमा मलाई सघाउनु पर्ने हो नि त घरमा त्यो गर्दाखेरि मेरो लोड कम हुन्थ्यो अनि पुरुष चाहिँ घरमा आएर घरायसी काम केही पनि गर्दैन ऊ चाहिँ मख के पर्छ भने मैले महिलालाई अधिकार दिए घरबाट बाहिर निकाले मानौ अधिकार भन्ने कुरा उसको मुठीमा कैद थियो हैन त्यसकारण जब हामी यो समानताको कुरा गर्छौं या चाहिँ पितृसत्ता लाई चाहिँ ढाल्ने कुराहरू गर्छौं भने महिला बाहिर निस्केर मात्रै नहुँदो रहेछ नि त पुरुषले पनि बाहिर र भित्र उही रूपमा समान रूपमा काम गर्न पर्यो भने महिलाले पनि उही गर्न पर्यो त्यसकारण यस्तो खालको भोगाइहरू चाहिँ थुप्रै छ फेरि यो पछि तपाईलाई भेट्नु छँदैछ हाम्रो
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद
अब आजको हाम्रो लास्ट पर्फर्मेन्स चाहिँ कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरबाट छ हामी उहाँहरू एकछिन प्रिपेयर गर्दै हुनुहुन्छ इन्दुजीको काम नेपाल आर्ट काउन्सिलमा जुन फोटोग्राफ्सहरू छ उहाँले नै आफैले खिच्नु भएको तथा अरूहरू त्यो बेलाको अब एनोनमस फोटोग्राफरहरूको पनि छ अनि यस्तै फेमिनिस्ट भोइस भएको कलाकारहरूको काम तपाईँले नेपाल आर्ट काउन्सिलमा अहिले हेर्न सक्नुहुन्छ अस्मिना रन्जितजीको वमरुङसँगै मिहेला ड्रागनको लाइक रिक्लेमिङ विचक्राफ्ट एन्ड फेमिनिस्ट एङ्गलको विचक्राफ्टको चाहिँ अलिकति फेमिनिस्ट एङ्गल र फ्युचरको बारेदेखि लिएर जामथिङला बारी प्रनिका सुधिरा कर्ण मधुमालाजी आक्वी थामी अनि माथि प्रमिला लामा शुभ दिप्तीको कोलाबोरेसन विथ अदर 30 अर्को कोलाबोरेटर्स त्यस्तै गरी किपाजी हुनुहुन्थ्यो अघि बिहान बोल्नु भएको किपाको पनि कोलाबोरेटिभ वर्क with Irina and Sonam. त्यस्तै गरी इन्दुजीकै रुममा द लार्ज रुममा चाहिँ बङ्गलादेशको त्रिपुरा इन्डिजिनियस कम्युनिटीको पनि भेरी सिमिलर स्टोरिज छ जुन चाहिँ त्यो इन्दुजी र काम हेरेपछि त्यो काम पनि लाइक रियली कनेक्टेड स्ट्रङली कनेक्टेड तपाईँहरूलाई फिल हुन्छ त्यस्तै गरी सुभाष तामाङको तामाङ इन्डिजिनियस कम्युनिटीको रेजिस्टेन्स र इरेजर अफ भोयरेन्स त्यस्तै सावाङ भन्ने आर्टिस्टको अहिले म्यानमारको जुन यो पोलिटिकल इन्स्टेबिलिटी छ जुन कु गरेको छ त्यसमा चाहिँ अनि अगेन कनेक्टिङ टु इनफ्याक्ट इन्दुजीकै स्टेटमेन्ट र काममा चाहिँ कसरी वुमनहरूले लगाउने कपडा लुङ्गी सँग चाहिँ एक्चुअल म्यास्कुलिनिटीको फियर पनि रहेछ जस्तो त्यो महिलाको कपडा चाहिँ अलिकति महिलाको आवरण त्यो चाहिँ देयर इज त्यो पावर डाइनामिक्स चाहिँ छ नै के अनि त्यो वुमनहरूलाई सब्जुग्युट गर्न चाहिँ प्रयोग गरे के अनि सावाङको काममा पनि उसले इज रिफ्लेक्टिङ द्याट यो म्यानमारको जुन होल यो मुभमेन्ट छ त्यसमा चाहिँ प्रोटेस्टरहरूले चाहिँ लुङ्गी बाटोमा झुन्डाएको किनभने यतातिर पनि छ नि आइमाईको लुगा मुनिबाट गयो भने चाहिँ अलक्षिण लाग्छ भन्ने जस्तो कतिवटा समाजमा छ त्यस्तै गरी म्यानमारमा पनि लुङ्गीको मुनिबाट गयो भने चाहिँ म्यास्कुलिनिटी हराउँछ भनेर सो हामीले चाहिँ जानी लुङ्गी पनि त्यो इन्ट्रान्समै हालेको छौँ सो इफ इट्स कन टेक अवे टक्सिक म्यास्कुलिनिटी देन बी इट भनेर अनि त्यही रुममा चाहिँ कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरको पनि वर्क छ सो आइड लाइक टु इन्भाइट नाउ कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टर कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टर चाहिँ 2005 मा दर्ता गर्नु फर्म भएको हो उहाँहरू चाहिँ कर्णाली मुगुमा बेस्ड हुनुहुन्छ A little bit about the concept. Dalit communities throughout Nepal have preserved and passed down knowledge about the performative arts through generations, yet their contribution to cultural, artistic and revolutionary element in Nepali history are often overlooked. As an organization led by Dalit activists, Karnali Arts Centre has experimented with vernacular performative and material mediums to reappropriate and reorient art to focus on Dalit voices and lived realities. So Karnali Arts Centre को बारे र यो हाम्रो performance को बारे चाहिँ हिराजीले पनि केही बोल्नुहुन्छ
थ्याङ्क यू सबैजनालाई नमस्कार म हिरा बिजुली नेपाली यो कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरको यो पर्फर्मेन्सको बारेमा थोरै भन्न चाहन्छु यो पर्फर्मेन्स खास गरी हुड्के नाच हो यो हुड्के नाच चाहिँ कर्णाली र सुदूरपश्चिममा विशेष गरी पुरुष मान्छेहरूले चाहिँ गाउने नाच गाउने गीत नाच्ने नाच हो यो तर त्यो बेला चाहिँ परम्परागत तरिकाले यो नाचलाई चाहिँ राजा महाराजाहरूको कथा भन्न उनीहरूको स्तुति गान गाउन भक्ति भजन गर्न र उनीहरूको प्रेम कथाहरू विशेष गरी एउटा राजाले 10 वटा सुन्दरीहरू बिहे गरेका थियो भन्ने कुरामा प्रयोग हुन्थ्यो आज हामीले चाहिँ त्यो कुरा त्यो एलिमेन्ट्स त्यो आर्टको त्यो फर्म त्यो एलिमेन्ट्सलाई हामीले चाहिँ दलित महिलाहरूको अधिकार दलित महिलाहरूको न्यायको सपनाका लागि सपना साकार बनाउने एउटा टुल्सको रूपमा चाहिँ हामीले प्रयोग गर्न खोजिरहेका छौँ हामी कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टर विशेष गरी कर्णालीको संस्कृति संरक्षणको कुरा गर्थ्यौँ हामी धेरै अगाडि। अहिले चाहिँ हामी संस्कृतिलाई चिरफार गर्नुपर्छ, यसलाई टुक्रा गर्नुपर्छ, यसलाई हेर्नुपर्छ, त्यहाँभित्र कुहिएको कुराहरूलाई फाल्नुपर्छ भनेर हामीले सोच्छौँ कि नेपालमा संस्कृति भन्ने बित्तिकै संरक्षण गरिने कुरा मात्रै हो भन्ने जुन चलन छ, संरक्षण मात्रै गरिने कुरा होइन संस्कृति भनेको। त्यसलाई च्यात्नु छ, त्यसलाई टुक्रा टुक्रा गरेर पत्र पत्र गरेर हेर्नुपर्छ भन्ने हाम्रो कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरको कन्सेप्ट छ अहिलेको। हामी त्यसमा काम गरेको छौँ थोर बहुत। त्यही हो, अब यो चाहिँ आर्ट सेन्टरको यो चाहिँ फर्स्ट हाम्रो महिला, विशेष गरी दलित महिलाहरूले त्यहाँको एउटा ठुलो च्यालेन्ज पनि छ हामीलाई कि भोलि समाज, ओभरअल समाजले चाहिँ एउटा दलित महिला हुड्के भएर चाहिँ देखिएको के सोच छ होला भनेर हामीले चाहिँ एजुम पनि गरिरहेको छौँ। समुदायमा चाहिँ के होला त्यसको प्रतिफल भन्ने कुरा पनि एजुम गरेर हामी ढुक्क केमा छौँ भनेर हामीले चाहिँ त्यो भइरहेको संस्कृतिको भइरहेको निरन्तरको कुरालाई चाहिँ हामीले तोड्ने, त्यसलाई च्यात्ने, त्यसलाई टुक्रा बनाएर रिस्टार्ट अथवा रिइस्टाब्लिस गर्न खोजिरहेको छौँ। धन्यवाद। स्वीकार्नुहोस् हाम्रो नाच।
छैन सम्पत्ति नै त भूमिमा पहुँचै छैन सम्पत्ति नै त हजुर सम्पत्ति नै त दलित महिला एकजुट भई ओ लडाउँ साथ साथ भूमिमा पहुँचै छैन सम्पत्ति नै त भूमिमा पहुँचै छैन सम्पत्ति नै त दलित महिला एकजुट भई लडाउँ साथ साथ दलित महिला एकजुट भई लडाउँ साथ साथ जीवनको मूल्य सस्तै बलात्कार सस्तै छ जीवनको मूल्य सस्तै बलात्कार ओ हजुर सस्तै बलात्कार कानुन छ कार्यान्वयन छैन हो न कोही जिम्मेवार सस्तै छ जीवनको मूल्य सस्तै बलात्कार सस्तै छ जीवनको मूल्य सस्तै बलात्कार कानुन छ कार्यान्वयन छैन न कोही जिम्मेवार कानुन छ कार्यान्वयन छैन न कोही जिम्मेवार पिर्ती सत्ता कर्णालीका ठौरा जब रहेछ पिर्ती सत्ता कर्णालीका ठौरा ओ हजुर कर्णालीका ठौरा जात व्यवस्था झनै जब्बर ओ के नाचुचा छौरा जब्बर रहेछ पिर्ती सत्ता कर्णालीका ठौरा जब्बर रहेछ पिर्ती सत्ता कर्णालीका ठौरा जात व्यवस्था झनै जब्बर के नाचुचा छौरा जात व्यवस्था झनै जब्बर के नाचुचा छौरा पुरानो चिन्तनलाई च्यातौँ ओ नयाँ चिन्तन भएर हामी सबै मिली प्रतिरोध गरौँ हामी सबै मिली प्रतिरोध गरौँ पुरानो चिन्तनलाई च्यातौँ नयाँ चिन्तन भएर पुरानो चिन्तनलाई च्यातौँ नयाँ चिन्तन भएर पर्था सबका घर घर बोक्सी र छाउ पढी पर्था सबका घर घर ओ हजुर सबका घर घर उत्पीडनका मोती हार ओदीमा खुल्ला घर बक्सिर चौपडी पर्था सबका घर घर बक्सिर चौपडी पर्था सबका घर घर उत्पीडनका मोती हार ओदीमा खुल्ला घर उत्पीडनका मोती हार ओदीमा खुल्ला घर छोरी पनि बनाऊ समान मन छोरा छोरी पनि बनाऊ समान मन ओ हजुर बनाऊ समान मन बच्चा पाउने मेसिन होइनन् ओ सङ्घर्षशील नारी मन छोरा सम्मान छोरी पनि बनाऊ सम्मान मन छोरा सम्मान छोरी पनि बनाऊ सम्मान मन बच्चा पाउने मेसिन होइन सङ्घर्षशील नारी बन बच्चा पाउने
धन्यवाद. Also translating what Hiraji had said, this is the Bata dance is actually performed by male, and this is the first time we have all female dancers and great performers. विष्णुजी अलिकति केही भन्नु हाम्रो टिमको बारे अनि जस्तो जालियाको तपाईले त एकदम लिड लिएर यो जालियाको वर्कशपहरु पनि गरिरहनु भएको छ अनि हाम्रो टिमको बारे तपाईले कसरी यो कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरमा चाहिँ एज अ वुमन लिड लिइरहनु भएको छ हजुर
पहिले त म 1 वर्षको मण्डलामा क्लास लिए क्लास लिनुभन्दा पहिले मलाई अझै पनि केही कुरा क्लियर थिएन म चाहिँ त्यहाँ क्लास लिइसकेपछि मलाई चाहिँ आफ्नो आवाज आफै कसरी उठाउने त हामीले आफ्नो कुरालाई आफै कसरी देखाउने त भन्ने कुरा एकदमै सिकाइ भयो र मैले तत्कालै किनकि यो हुड्को नाच हाम्रो गाउँतिर फेरि एक त दलित जातको मान्छे र केटा मान्छेले मात्रै हुड्को नाच्ने गर्थे र मैले के सोचे भनेपछि ल अहिले हामी केटी मान्छे गर्दा के हुन्छ त हैन केटीले नगर्नु भने के छ त अहिले गरेर हेरौँ न त सोचे हैन मैले हिराजीले हामीले टिमले सल्लाह गरेर ल हामी अब अहिले केटीको हुड्को डान्स लग्ने हुड्को नाच लग्ने सोचिसकेपछि मलाई चाहिँ गरेपछि हुने त रहेछ भन्ने एकदमै खुसी लागेको छ किनकि हाम्रो कुरा कसैले उठाइदिदैन हाम्रो आवाज कसैले उठाइदिदैन हामीले आफै बोल्नु पर्छ आफै आफ्नो आवाजलाई उठाउनु पर्छ भन्ने मलाई एकदमै फिल भइरहेको छ अहिले पनि र हाम्रो जाले पनि छ यस्तो जाले हामी 5 जनाले गाउँमा रिसर्च गरेर हाम्रो केही पहिलाको आमाहरू सासु आमाहरू उहाँहरूसँग सिकेर हामीले बनाएका छौं यस्तो जालेहरू अब यो जालेहरू पहिले माग्नेमा श्रीमती माग्न जाँदाखेरि लिने गर्थे रे एकदमै पहिलाको हाम्रो त्यो गहना हो रे गहना त्यो हराउँदै गएको थियो र मैले कसरी अब कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरले कसरी नयाँ पुरानो कुरा लोभ हुने कुरालाई कसरी अगाडि लैजाने त लोभ नगर्ने र हामीले आफैले रिसर्च गरेर हुन्छ कि कतैबाट खोजेर हुन्छ कि आफैले बनाएर आफैले लगाएर आफ्नो कल्चरलाई पछाडी नफाल्ने भन्ने मेरो चाहिँ एकदमै इच्छा थियो थ्यांक यू
धन्यवाद धन्यवाद कर्णाली आर्ट सेन्टरले चाहिँ रेडियो नाटक पनि बनाइरहनु भएको छ र यो जुन भारत नाच छ त्यो चाहिँ अब सो लाइक दे हैव आल्सो बीन मेकिङ रेडियो नाटक के भन्छ रेडियो प्ले and then so they have completed 3 episodes and they're actually fundraising for more so the radio play is about the realities Dalit community have to face on the daily basis and also the stories of resistance which is obviously again like we all know are not visible in the mainstream medias and hidden purposefully so please so they are in the process of fundraising and please connect with Bishnuji and Hiraji directly if you want to help and also translating a little bit about the Zalia. So Bishnuji and Karnali Arts Centre are based in Karnali region and they are super into preservation and researching and understanding of material knowledge and as we all know how material knowledge are marginalized and then written languages which are used by the high priest and upper caste are more like valued and considered more intellectual and therefore because of the marginalization are now in the state of crisis. Karnali Arts Centre have been researching and trying to preserve and one of their project is to research about the Zalia necklace, which is very much like used to be very popular around the Karnali region, but now slowly disappearing. And the team in the leadership of Vishnuji are collecting oral histories, stories behind, process behind it, and recreating and doing workshop for the younger generation. And you can see 20 of the Jalia exhibited at the Nepal Art Council. टिमको एकचोटि नाम पनि भनिदिनु न, तपाईहरुको नाम भनिदिनु न।
यहाँहरु सबैलाई नमस्कार, मेरो नाम चाहिँ धनबहादुर बिटालु।
अघि पनि नमस्कार गर्नु बिर्सेछु। सबैजनालाई नमस्कार, मेरो नाम विष्णुमाया परियार, मेरो घर मुगु कर्णाली।
सबैलाई नमस्कार, मेरो नाम शोभा नेपाली।
सबैजनालाई नमस्ते, मेरो नाम चाहिँ सम्झना नेपाली, घर चाहिँ मुगु हो। थ्यांक यू।
यहाँहरु सबैलाई नमस्कार, मेरो नाम जन्मलक्ष्मी हमाल, मेरो घर चाहिँ मुगु कर्णाली।
Thank you. So this is the end of today's Kurakani session, and let's go have some momos. Sorry, what? Okay. Oh, just some snacks. Sorry. Oh, sorry.